Yo yo yo, hey guys, what's up? What's up? Yeah, so this is the last video that I'm doing on the three tanks. It's Paladin. So in 3.x, Paladin was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. It was bad for a couple of reasons. One, it made well, a few reasons, I guess. It made tank swapping awkward. It also conflicted with Dark Knight, so you couldn't tank with Paladin and Dark Knight, and its cooldowns were kind of bad. It couldn't block magic, and its damage was low, and it had TP issues. So there were a few things that was wrong with Paladin, and I think the biggest thing that made Paladin so bad was actually the meta. So back in 3.x, Dark Knights had Delirium, so that meant that you didn't need to bring a monk. And because Ninja Dragoon was not only higher raid DPS but also more utility, that kind of pushed Monk out. So with the fact that you brought a Dragoon and a Ninja, you would just naturally bring a Dark Knight, and a Dark Knight's damage was better. So a Dark Knight brought Delirium if you needed it, and Reprisal, and it brought more damage. So it wasn't necessarily just the fact that Paladin was underwhelming. I think it had more to do with the meta, in all honesty, than because if you compared the three tanking classes just by themselves, right? So if you just compared the three tanking classes, they were all okay. Warrior was better than both of them. Okay, that's no doubt. But Dark Knight and Paladin were pretty close. The biggest thing that separated Dark Knight and Paladin, I feel, was the damage. The Dark Knight just simply did more damage, and because Paladins couldn't block magic, it made Dark Mind better than a lot of made Dark Mind really good. But now Paladins can block magic. Now Paladins they don't make tank swaps awkward, and now Paladins deal a lot of damage. I'm really glad that the changes that they made in 4.0 to Paladins happened, because back in 3.x, I didn't hate Paladin because it was Paladin. That's stupid. I hated Paladin because it was awful. It was awful. Like I said, it was just a really bad class. It was viable. It was viable, but it was kind of like, why bring one when you can just bring a Dark Knight, I guess, kind of thing. Divine Veil was always pretty good. I think it was a little overrated though in 3.x. I always thought Reprisal was better than this, but now now that Paladins have Reprisal, I think this saw not really a slight buff, but as far as like the meta goes, because now you can stack this with Reprisal and it's fucking bananas, you know. Overall, this class is awesome, and they solved every issue that it had before. So before, it couldn't block magic, now it can block magic. There were TP issues. The TP issues are fucking gone now. Its damage is really high, and its off tanky capabilities are crazy good, and its main tanking capabilities are crazy good. So literally everything that was wrong with Paladin at 3.x, they fixed it. They fixed it, and it's fucking awesome. I still think that Shield Oath should be, or I'm sorry, I still think that Sword Oath should be off the GCD. This is, I think because Dark Side is off the GCD, this should be off the GCD. I think the Shield Oath should remain on the GCD, but this should definitely be on be off the GCD. Fight or Flight is still really good. They cut it down by 30 seconds, but and this is a lot better. This version of it, I believe, is a lot better. The Requisite Holy Spirit is fucking crazy good. Its cooldowns are still pretty good. Intervention is pretty amazing, as well as Sheltron. Sheltron's even better now that it can block magic. The only to their cooldowns, and I've said this before, I really think that if they made Sentinel 2 minutes at 30%, I think it would be better. But you know, 40, the extra 10% doesn't warrant the extra minute, in my opinion. I think this should be. I'm a fan of lower cooldown abilities with medium power, because the medium power lower cooldowns are better in the long run. Because, like, let's say that this was 30%. If you use this on a tank buster, the extra 10% is not, you're like, it's not gonna, the extra, I am a firm believer that the extra 10% does not matter, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The extra 10% doesn't matter. I would rather have Sentinel at 2 minutes and 30% than 3 minutes at 40%. But I mean, it is what it is kind of thing. Bulwark, even though this can block magic, I still think 3 minutes is too much. This is way too much. Three minute cooldown for block rate of 60% is that's a bit much. I think it should be like 2 minutes at the most, or 90 seconds. But outside of these, like reduction in cooldowns, and you know what, I could be wrong on these. I'm just a fan of lower cooldowns, medium power. Rampart is still really good. Passive Arms is really, really fucking good. You can even use this as a tank cooldown if you want. I mean, it's better than fucking Bulwark. If you're out of fucking CDs for whatever reason, just use this and you'll block it. I find it weird. I do find it weird that Paladins actually have a gauge. I think I think the only reason why Paladins have this gauge in the first place is because every other class in the game has a gauge. I think realistically, if you just put this on 30 seconds and you put intervention at like, I don't know, like a minute, maybe a minute and a half, I don't think the class would change that much, if at all. I find myself sitting on 100 bar or resource or whatever quite frequently. So yeah, I don't know about the gauge. I mean, I guess it is what it is, but I just think it's kind of like, I think they just put it in there because every other class had a gauge, but whatever. Total Eclipse is amazing. It's awesome in lower level dungeons. It's awesome in higher level dungeons. It's just awesome all around. This is what they needed. More AoE instead of spamming flash, because spamming flash it felt really awful. It felt really awful. Hollowed is still hollowed. Cover is awesome now because cover works on magic attacks. It also, when you cover someone, you also take 80% of the damage instead of full damage. They buffed Rage of Halone, which is really good. That needed a buff. And they took off, they made it to where Fast Blade goes into Riot Blade, going into Royal Authority, which was really needed. This was the fact that in 3.x, when Savage Blade comboed into Royal Authority, it just made everything so awkward because it made tank swapping awkward. It made Dark Knight Paladin tanking cops really, really bad. Like, it made them unviable. Like, in my opinion, Dark Knight Paladin was unviable. Like, if you had a Dark Knight and a Paladin, one of those should switch to Warrior. Just because Dark Knight did more damage while tanking than Paladin, but Paladin, it's not like you're gonna spam, Goring Blade. You're gonna want to do your Royal Authority, So I guess overall, I've had some pretty good parses in Susano and Lakshmi, and I think Paladin is super, super strong right now. I think it is probably the strongest, and every single issue that they had in 3.x has been solved. They even got buffed a little bit by gaining access to Reprisal. Their damage is awesome. Their rotation is awesome. It feels good. This shit right here, feels really fucking good. This Requisite Holy Spirit spam, yeah, this shit feels pretty fucking good. I like the rotation a lot. It's pretty simple, but it's a good rotation. You have like kind of a mana phase, which lets you gain a little bit of TP. So it kind of solves, you have like this mana phase, and then you have the phase where you use Fight or Flight, and it's a physical phase where you build up your mana. So the rotation is really solid. The cooldowns are really solid, except for, my small gripes about, I think that these two should be lower. But I don't know. I guess that's just a matter of opinion. Like I said, I'm more of a fan of lesser cooldowns with medium power as opposed to high cooldowns with longer, high cooldowns with more power. I think you get more out of the lower cooldowns, medium power. Hollowed is still hollowed. I still think the Holmgang is better than this in most situations because you can use Holmgang multiple times throughout the fight, whereas this at most you get two at most. But when you do use it, it is really powerful, and sometimes this is better than Holmgang, and it's mm, uh, I would say it's probably on. See, I don't know. It's just so fight. It's just so fight specific because sometimes Living Dead is fine. Other times Living Dead is AIDS. Sometimes this is better. So I guess it's just really fight specific. But I mean, Hollowed is still Hollowed. It's still as far as power goes, it's still the most powerfulest or powerfulest. Okay, so the most powerful. But yeah, I think this is. I think this the changes to Paladin are amazing. Not being able to not being able to be interrupted anymore is really really good, especially for when you're tanking the boss and you're casting Holy Spirit. I You normally don't want to use Clemency, but it was really fucking annoying when you were casting Clemency and it did get interrupted. So now that that's gone, Intervention is amazing. So is Sheltron. But like I said, I feel like the gauge is kind of, I mean, gauge is whatever kind of thing. Yeah, but overall, this class is really, really, really fucking solid. I think it's super strong, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun now. I found Paladin a little boring in 3.x, and that is completely, that's going to vary from person to person. But I found Paladin pretty boring in 3.x and super boring in 2.0 or 2.x. But now the class is super fucking fun in my opinion. The rotation is really solid. It's its damage is really high, and its utility is crazy. Like they kind of took all the utility from the other tanks and just gave it all to Paladin, which is fine, but man, the Paladin's damage is pretty good still. It's pretty good. Uh, so so yeah, I would definitely think this is definitely the go-to prog tank. I'm really happy about the changes, especially the TP shit, because if you guys play Paladin 3.x, when you ran out of TP, it was just miserable. And now, if you run out of TP, well, I don't. I mean, unless you die, it's not going to happen because you're going to be doing your mana phase. So pretty much Paladin's got what 2-3 times as good, which is really really awesome because they had some major issues back in 3.x. But I'm really happy with the changes. There's definitely going to be a lot more Paladins in Prague because this class is really good, and it's really fun being able to off tank well. Like when you use intervention, when you use intervention on the tank, it's just a Phil's Goodman. It's just like, yeah, like I got you. You can even like if you know that the next tank buster or something isn't going to happen in like 90 seconds, you can even buff this if you want. So that's really good. You can also shield other party. This is just a really good skill. Intervention is crazy good. It's really good. Both of the gauge abilities on Paladin are really really awesome. You don't really get punished for switching. I know, yes, you get in these weird situations where you'll have like 8, but because Paladins, both of their abilities are off the GCD, you can essentially Sheltron then swap, or you can intervention then swap if you need to. So you kind of don't lose any gauge. So it kind of mimics 3. X Warrior, where you don't really lose any resource, I guess. You do lose the GCD still. You do still lose the GCD. But yeah, like I said though, I really feel like Sordo should be off the GCD, just because I still think it's a bit unfair that Darkside is off the GCD and so is Deliverance, but Sword Oath is not. Sword Oath you also don't gain the benefit of immediately, like outside of the penalty of Shield Oath. So when you go to Sword Oath, yes, you do 15% more damage, but you don't actually see the auto attack potency gain for like 2 or 3 GCDs later. So that's why I believe it should be off the GCD. But outside of that, and maybe a reduction of cooldown on these two, Paladin is ridiculously good. It's fucking awesome, and I definitely recommend leveling it. And yeah, I mean, pretty much, pretty much that's all I got to say. I'll just throw this little tidbit in here. This strength accessory shit right here is absolute cancerous. They need to change this. They need to change the strength accessory because right now tank damage calculations are fucking stupid. The fact that they switched from vitality to back to strength is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It was perfect before. It was absolutely perfect before, but the fact that they switched it is I don't know, man. It's just this is really bad, and I hope they switch it back. They either need to switch it back or they need to lock these accessories out. You should not be able to wear the 270 strength. You should not be able to if they're gonna lock out VIT, or I'm sorry, if they're gonna make VIT only accessible to tanks and lock out strength, they need to lock out all of the strength, not just from 4.x onward. They need to lock this shit out too, because I can already see with the amount of cooldowns the tanks have, with the amount of swaps, with the amount of invulns, HP isn't going to matter. HP isn't going to matter because the amount of cooldowns that you have now. So like let's take Dark Knight Paladin, for example. Well, now both tanks can protect each other. So if the Paladin is off tanking, they can just throw intervention on the Dark Knight, which is a base 10% mitigation, you know, let alone if they use Rampart or Sentinel. So that's an extra 10% that you didn't have before. And then on top of that, Dark Knights have Blackest Night. So that's a 20% Stone Skin on top of their cooldown. So the amount of cooldowns that tanks have is just outrageous. The only real damage that comes are from the tank busters and maybe the cleaves. So outside of that, the VIT needed to clear these encounters is insanely low if you know the fight. You just use a cooldown. It's kind of outrageous how little VIT you actually need. A lot of people would disagree with me on that, but you know what? That's fine. But I could tell you what, that if you stack your cooldowns properly, you do not need much HP. You do not need much HP. So I really, really hope that they change this, because the strength meta should have died back in Gordius. This shit should have died back in Gordius, and it should have never been revived. Tanks should have to wear VIT, and VIT should scale for their damage. Like, you should gain damage off of VIT. Or, you know what? If they want to nerf tank damage, that's fine too. That's fine too. But just nerf it across the board, and do not let tanks wear strength accessories. Not even 270. The fact that you can wear these 270 accessories make all the 320s pretty much obsolete. I just can't believe they changed it. But anyway, enough about that. Overall, I think Paladin is fucking awesome. It saw so many buffs, and every single issue that was wrong with this class has been fixed. No more TP issues, super high damage. It can off tank just as well as main tank. It's a very, very, very solid class. 10 out of 10. And I'm really glad that they changed it to where you can block magic, because I remember when they said that would never happen, and they changed it, and it was for the better. Because as a paladin, you really feel indestructible. When you block an ultimate, I think it's like the stupidest thing, but in a good way. Like when you block a magic ultimate attack, it's just like you see that shield swipe proc light up. It's just like, yeah, that's what's up. I think that's really funny. But overall, I think this class is awesome, and I can't wait to play it in a raid. So that's it. Peace.